Hello, everybody. It's Heather and Deb here. And this is the Skeptic and the Mystic episode. Doesn't matter what number it is. What we're
56.
talking about, 56, right, is using the law of polarity to change your life. So if you do not want to change your life, don't bother paying attention, right? But if there's some things in your life that you would like to change, you're finding yourself struggling with fulfillment, happiness. This is it's super easy. It's a super easy like universal law, and once you hear it, you'll be like, oh yeah. But for some reason, for humans, it's kind of hard to grasp. Like it's easy to hear and be like, yeah, but it's oftentimes hard to put into practice.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
will say, even if you're just trying to slightly tweak your life, this is a good
Hmm.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It
Doesn't have to be
is.
sweeping changes.
Hmm. So, and I will say this, and Deb, I know you're on this. I'm pretty sure you're on the same page of this. If, like, in the spiritual and personal development world, where there people are just like good vibes only.
Oh, I have an issue with that one. I think we have talked about that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's your issue with that one?
I just think it's bullshit. Like, I think you're setting yourself up for failure if you think you're always supposed to be in a good freaking mood. Number one, that's not the human condition. It's also like spiritual gaslighting. Like, you're not, that's not the mission, is to feel beautiful, happy unicorns, rainbows. What do you say? Shitting sprinkles
Sprinkles.
all the time. I mean,
Right.
yes, we would love for that to be the majority of our experience, but when we practice good vibes only or no bad days, we don't allow for the rhythms.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and that's I feel the same way. And so the law of polarity, we'll talk about what the law is, the difference between masculine and feminine energy, and how it doesn't necessarily mean gender, ways to use this law for you, how to embrace your natural energy, and ways to heal so that you can easily live in your natural energy.
I love this one. I'm so excited.
I know. Yeah. So I want to review first, though, because we've been talking about these universal laws, and I just want to, just because I'm a dork and I don't like, I think it's helpful just to review. We talked about the law of assumption first, which actually isn't one of the 12 universal laws, but it's still a very good one.
Mhm.
And the idea is law of assumption is to change anything in your life, you have to change the beliefs and assumptions you hold about it. So if you have a belief that, like, so let's just use money as an example. You have a belief that rich people are assholes, right? Then, and you don't ever want to be an asshole, then being rich is, they're not in alignment. It's not going to happen for you, right? So you have to change your belief about rich people in order to become a rich person. Right?
Yes.
Then we have the law of inspired action, right, which is connecting to the feelings and the desires and taking action from that inspired place, right? Not from the person who you are now, but from who you're becoming. Right?
Mhm.
So, do you want to explain then the law of polarity?
So, law of polarity, I guess, easiest way would be to just think of it as everything has an equal and opposite side, right? Whenever there is light, there is dark. You can't have one without the other. You can't know the experience of happiness if you've never felt sadness, right? I mean, all of these things, it's like a stick that will always have two ends,
Mm-hmm.
and we actually need both ends of the stick.
Right.
So I think that's also kind of the good vibes only thing is, yes, of course, you want to hang out on the happy side more often than you're on the sad, mad, whatever negative assignment you want to give it
Mm-hmm.
side. But you can't. There's a balance. The universe, the is always going to want to find balance.
Yes.
So it is that simple and that difficult, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
It's interesting because it's also, I think there's like, while that is two opposite things, like if you think of it as like a coin, like there's two opposite sides of the coin, but there's still just one coin. So
Mm-hmm.
they're different, but the same.
Yeah. Well, and ultimately, it really comes down to like, what is your story about that thing, right? Like,
Yes.
it's never about you and I, when I work with people, like it's all about what emotions do they want to feel, and they'll call me and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm feeling anxious," and I'm like, "Okay, well, what's your relationship with that anxiety?" And they're like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you believe about that anxiety? Do you believe that you shouldn't be anxious?" "Yes, I shouldn't be." Okay, that's what's causing the problem. The anxiety is not causing the problem, right?
Yes.
It's just what do you believe about it. And so with the law of polarity and like how to make it work for you, right, is to look at it in such a way that like you just said, everything has its like equal and opposite, right? Like that's like Newton's third law of motion is for every action there's equal and opposite reaction, right? Everything comes in pairs, negative, positive, like action, reaction, masculine, feminine, day, night, like you said. And if every time, I live in Charlotte and it's getting dark now, and if I was like, damn it, it shouldn't get dark, I hate the night and I curse the night,
Right.
I'm gonna have a miserable like night, right?
Yeah.
Life generally.
Yeah.
Right? So if I make the meaning that night is a bad thing, right, that's when we suffer. We
Absolutely.
always suffer because of the meaning that we put onto something, not because
That's
of the thing itself.
Yes, that's a really good point. I was saying before we got on, I led a workshop yesterday and I had a couple of people that were like, I just want to feel peace. I just want to feel peace. Why can't I feel peace? And that is part of this. Well, the fact that you feel like you have to feel peace or you're not in peace is why you're not in peace. Like you
Right.
can make peace with
Not being in peace.
not being in peace. And I think another thing that's kind of helpful is it's just as easy to be in peace as it is to be in misery, right? And so if you can know that if you can get yourself to believe deep in your core that both of those things, like the universe is neutral, the universe doesn't have an opinion
About
about
anything.
peace or misery. Yeah, it just is. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just as easy to be there. I know that sounds, people are like, yeah, F you, it's not just that easy.
Right.
But by knowing what the misery feels like, it's giving you a clue as to the direction you want to then go, right? Every
Mm-hmm.
time you learn what you don't want, you understand more about what you do want.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
you can apply that to relationships. I mean, if people are, every time you date someone that isn't the greatest fit for you, you get closer to finding the person that is, because now you're like, oh, okay, this doesn't fit into my life very well. So I would like to seek the different side of that.
Right. And I've been talking with somebody about like personality types, and I know I can totally geek out on personality types, and
Do too.
I love that stuff. But one of the things is like oftentimes we look at people who are the opposite personality as us, and they're bad, they're wrong. Why aren't they like this? Shouldn't everybody be like me? Right. But when we just look at it, and again, it's like we have to have the whole spectrum, right? It's not that those people are bad or wrong. It's just that they're opposite of us, period. Right. And like you talked about dating. So I think that's a good segue in talking about like masculine, feminine energy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that is something where we see it everywhere. Like this polarity is like
Yes.
it's beautiful. Like it
Well, and
is.
let's be clear, it has nothing to do with your gender or your sexual preference.
Mm,
But you need to have polarity to have the romantic type of attraction. Doesn't
yes.
necessarily have to occur in a friendship type of relationship, but if you're looking for a romantic sexual relationship, you if you don't have the polarity, that will not last.
Right. And that's what happens for a lot of people is that they try to what's the word I'm looking, like depolarize the other person and
Yeah,
try.
they try to assimilate almost.
Right. I love Allison Armstrong.
Mhm.
She does a lot of masculine, feminine stuff. So if you're really trying to understand men, she's got a lot of great courses that I highly recommend. But she talks about how like women oftentimes think that men are just hairy women and like want them to act in such a way and not appreciate, right, their like who they are and their characteristics. So masculine, I want to see if I can screen share that the what I had sent to you
Oh, the
earlier.
chart. Yeah.
Yeah, the chart.
Yeah.
Let's see
No,
if
I think it's good. While you're looking for that, I think we should just touch on the fact that I know it's like a touchy topic because of all the conversations around gender identity and stuff like that. So just to clarify for anybody this is a brand new topic, we all have masculine and feminine energies within us. Every single human being does. And every single human being, well, not every, most human beings will naturally operate from a particular essence. And it's not that all women naturally operate from a feminine essence, but everybody will lead for the most part with one or the other. There's one that you are more comfortable in, and therefore you would seek a partner that operates from the other. So
Right.
this can be in same-sex relationships, it doesn't matter. And even in heterosexual relationships, sometimes the woman does operate from the masculine, and there can be polarity with a man that operates from the feminine. It's rare, but it can be there in that way.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't screen share it. There's like asking all these permission things.
Okay.
Maybe I'll see if I can well, I can't. Just making it complicated. But
yeah.
Send us a message and then we'll send it to you. How about that?
Yeah.
But I want to say, just to piggyback off of what you said, I was at a Tony Robbins Date with Destiny in 2014. I'm trying to think where it was. Yeah, 2014. And Melissa Etheridge was there. And there's Tony, at least when at that event, he spends a whole day on this whole topic of masculine and feminine energy. And she was getting up on stage and talking and singing something, but before she sang, she started saying that she didn't realize until that event that she kept trying to live in the feminine, but she's like, at the core of who I am is masculine.
Exactly my point.
Kept, and when you could look at her, most people would be like, yeah, we know that. But she kept denying it because culture told her that she needed to be a different way, right? But she, yes, once she embraced that she was at the core more masculine in her energy, she was more aligned with herself and more authentic. And so, yes, masculine energy is, and this is not an exhaustive list by any means, but masculine energy is mission driven. They're problem solvers. They're competitive. They have this outward expansive energy. Typically have trouble expressing emotions. And in relationships, they desire to feel appreciated in relationships, right? And this chart that I have, why I wanted to show is what I love, because they have what the wounded masculine looks like, right? I really, this is my own pet peeve, the whole term toxic masculinity drives me batshit crazy, because true masculinity is not toxic at all. There's wounded masculine, there's wounded feminine, but gosh, there's so much goodness in the masculine energy. And
I have my whole project that I will be launching so soon, because I really want to focus on that. We're going to talk more about this in a future episode.
Yeah. So the wounded masculine is, they become a perpetrator. They abuse power, dominant. They're an aggressive type personality. Control. They're all about control. Competitive, confrontational, criticism, abuse, avoidance, unsupportive, unstable. That looks like half the people that are running our country.
Yeah, exactly. But for the purposes of this discussion, we can probably maybe go on the assumptions of what are the healthy expressions, right?
Yeah. And I think it's helpful just to know what the wounded are, because a lot of times people are think that, oh, he's just a man, and that our society says that is masculine, but it's not. It's a wounded masculine energy.
Yes.
Right? Yes. Yeah. So then with the feminine energy is, they're open, they're free, they're all about flow, they're all about intuitiveness and inward energy. They're tender, they're ready to give and receive. In relationships, they have a desire to be noticed and understood. When they're living in their wounded feminine energy, they live in victim mode. They're powerless, express weakness, neediness, codependency, oversensitivity, over emotional. They withhold their energy and can be manipulative, right? And so that's the wounded, right? That's when they're not living in their true essence. And so there's I'm not living in my true essence, and I can live in the wounded feminine energy, or I was talking about with Melissa Etheridge, she was not living in her true core, was masculine,
right,
energy, and it was showing up.
And then I just want to touch on the fact that we will all move within each of these through the course of a day, a week, our lives. Um, and I know, again, we'll dive more into this as a specific topic, I think. But I have noticed in recent years, especially with a lot of my female friends, particularly if they are single women running a household, especially if you're a single mom, you're working a full time job or running a business, whatever. All of those doing types of things are in that mission oriented problem solver. They're in the masculine space.
Yep.
So we as women we step into that masculine, and this will come back to the polarity piece. Sometimes we then don't step back into the feminine, even though we are feminine essence naturally wanting to be in that space, not giving ourselves the opportunity, and therefore oftentimes in this example not drawing in masculine men because we are putting off masculine energy. So that goes back to the polarity piece, right? Mm-hmm. In a relationship, a lot of times when that passion piece dies, it's because one partner or both have had to shift or just change, or they try to, sometimes it's well intentioned, trying to change to meet your partner in a place that they're at, but it depolarizes the relationship.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of times, like you said, it's not intentional, right? But it's like, right, if somebody is not stepping up in either way, right? And depending on their personality type, like for women, if the man's not stepping up, then they're like, well, I got to do it. Like for
you lose trust.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You lose trust in his ability to have direction, and therefore you take it on. And it happens so subtly, because I have been in that relationship before where all of a sudden I realize I'm the one taking charge of everything, and I didn't even realize I was becoming resentful about it, or, and it would just be little nitpicky things. Like we'd be driving and he would be like, should I turn here? And I'd be like,
make a decision.
Yeah. Don't care. But not having the language and this framework around that, I didn't recognize that was making me take a more masculine role to navigate, which, number one, I'm not meant to be a navigator. Do not, if anybody knows me and has ever been on a road trip with me, do not ask me to be the navigator.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with depolarization, right, it's like that is essentially when somebody attempts to neutralize the energy to make it the same. And there's, a lot of time, like a lot of that happening today of just trying to make, the energies, bad or good. And it's like, we need both of them to function as Absolutely. A world, right? It's just like,
I think that's where calling out toxic masculinity to the point of men become like, well, I don't really know they don't even know the healthy way to express anymore. So then right. That Adam Carolla used to have a joke, which he's pretty crass sometimes, but I mean, years ago, he would have this, like, I think he had a whole book or something he wrote that was called Pretty Soon We'll All Be Chicks. And he would just talk about how, like, we're just emasculating men, and then, like, women are becoming, like, stronger and stronger. And if you think of it like an X, we're all just going to meet right here in the middle, and we'll all just be...
Mm-hmm. I think it was on Prime. I never watched it, but there's some movie about like what happens like when they like men were extinct and there was like one man left, and it was all this women. And I was like, and it was a parody, parody documentary. I was like, I don't even know if I can handle watching that, right? Because it just makes me so sad, right? It's like, let's like.
This goes back to the idea of the rhythms and the pendulum, because there is, like we've been living, and I don't want to get on the whole like fight the patriarchy thing or whatever, but we have it's a fact. We've been living in a more patriarchal society, and the response is now there is this strong push to bring us back into a more feminine energy because the universe wants to balance.
Right.
The polarity will express itself whether we want it to or not. That's why it's a universal law.
Yeah. And that's where like, the patriarchy, is the wounded masculine, right? That like, again, it's not like toxic. It's just the wounded masculine. And who knows, like, we're so good at wounding each other,
Mhm.
And so I don't want to like say, well, it's because of this or whatever. It's just like this is where we are, right?
Yeah.
And mother, the mother energy is wanting to come in more, and it's not about then, though, that's the polarity, right? It's not about then switching all the way over to that
Yeah,
side, to
because
the
that's not good either.
right? It's having those energies coexist and
Yes.
honoring each of them and valuing each of them. And from, I don't know, what I see is not like we're just like trying to make this so, one side's so bad and no, we're right and we're wrong. It's like, no, like these, like I can't curse the moon, and just praise the sun. Like
Right.
nothing, you get the
I do
idea.
know what you mean. Yeah, and I agree. I think that this, again, we can, get angry at the patriarchy, call out toxic masculinity, whatever. The I don't even know the sensitive way to say it, but there is part of the feminist movement that is really just doing the exact same thing.
Yes. Yeah. And it's very, yeah, a lot of it is, and I know we can get slack for this, but a lot of this is they're when I look at a lot of the women, like they're acting out of all these feelings of like the wounded masculine, and they're super angry and super like you're fucking it. And I'm like, that's a very masculine energy, when the
Well, I
feminine
mean,
is, oh, go ahead.
is yeah, no, I was just gonna say it's all the underlying message we're sharing in all of this. And of course, we went on a tangent like we always do, but that's wounds. It's wounds. And when we're operating from a wounded state, we aren't going to get really the results we're probably hoping for.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that,
Yeah.
like, you talked about the wounded feminine, like oversensitivity, is one of those. And there's so many women. It's like, you say one thing like, oh, my dog's a boy, and then they get freaked out on, and you're like, like it is. Yeah. So,
Did we talk about what healthy feminine was? Did we cover it? We did,
yes,
like the
yeah, yeah.
receiving and soft and yeah, kind of.
Mhm.
Yeah, you
Yep.
did. You said the flowy part and
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So with depolarization, one of the ways that we can not depolarize, we already talked about like not trying to have good vibes only, right? But like just allowing things to be, not saying that like this is bad, this is good, right? It just is. Like we can't say, oh, day is good, night is bad. No,
Mhm.
day is day, night is night. Dark is dark, light is light. Like they're not bad, they're not wrong. You have to have each of those.
Yeah.
And when we can stop making the thing, masculine is so bad. No, a wounded masculine, hurtful. Yes. Right? Wounded feminine, hurtful. Absolutely. Right?
Yeah.
But masculine in its true form, it's beautiful. And
Right.
oh gosh, it's gorgeous, and the natural feminine, oh my gosh,
Right.
like way more beautiful than the natural masculine, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And when you can bring that polarity in reference to relationships, that's like the most beautiful and fulfilling relationship for both parties
Right.
because you're complementing each
Yeah.
other's strengths and each other's needs are feeling supported and met,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But okay, so then it becomes the how
Yeah.
how do I even, I mean, how do I even identify, like, I mean, I know it's easy for me to articulate, but I'm sure there's people being like, okay, well, I'm not sure I know which one I naturally am, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So what would you say?
Yeah. Yeah. So I say to, think back to when you were a kid, 5, 6 years old, 4, 5, 6 years old, right? And just look at the things that I know people are like, oh, the stereotypes, blah, blah, blah. But like, look at the things like like, how did you show up in the world? What did you like to play with? What did you like?
How
What
did
were
you
your natural
express?
tendencies? How did you write? How did you express?
Yeah.
And that can give you a good indication of what these energies are. It's not bad that boys want to play with trucks or that girls want to play with dolls. Like it's just because girls are nurturing, guys want to build and destroy. And I
Well,
say
and I
guys,
had
masculine,
cousins as a kid that as boys always wanted to play with the girl things. And guess what? That's now obvious in their adult life. Like they're
right,
feminine essenced men. It's
right,
okay. That's okay.
fine,
We're not
right.
saying one is, better than the other. It's just understanding which which feels more natural to you, So I would say, using Melissa Etheridge as an example, if you feel like you're always fighting the world, fighting, like like if you feel like you're trying to squish into a box that someone else tried to put you in, perhaps you're not living in your natural essence.
Right.
Perhaps. I mean, there could be many factors there, but that's an indicator for sure.
Right.
You're frustrated all the time.
Yep. Yeah. And so the other part of it, and on a conscious level, is like embracing your natural energy is like shifting your focus from the negative to the positive. And this is not good vibes only like stuff, right? But it's seeing the opposite polarity and honoring it for what it is, right? And so when something happens and you're really mad, like I was so irritable last week, like ridiculously. So a bunch of people told me that there was stuff going on astrologically, and a bunch of other people were like, oh my gosh, I was irritated and frustrated too, right?
Me too, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so crazy. And I was irritated and frustrated, and I was fine that I was irritated and frustrated. I was like, well, I'm just irritated and frustrated right now. It's just, I'm not PMSing either. Like, I'm just like, and I didn't make it bad. I was like, okay, what is this? And I'm like, oh, this is an energy that I'm experiencing because I'm human and I'm going to experience lots of different energies, period. It just is what it is. Like, yeah, I did all the things to support me. This time of year, the liver is when it's springtime. So the liver's going to be like more heightened. And the liver is like anger and frustration energy, so I was eating, like being mindful, which I always am, but like even more so mindful of my energy, my sleep and breath work and all those kind of things. And even in spite of all those things, I was still like, I just wanted to hurt everybody, you know? And I just didn't make it wrong. I was like, people, how are you? And I'm like, really fucking frustrated.
Yeah.
I didn't make it bad or wrong. Right. And so just looking at like, instead of like, oh, I got to be positive all the time, or, oh, I'm negative. No, I just am.
You just are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think also being mindful of where you're exercising confirmation bias, because it's easy to go down that slippery slope when you're like pissy and everything's irritating you. You're going to keep on seeing more of those things, right? So you can just allow that to be what it is. And like you said, kind of look at it from like, also this too shall pass, right? It always passes.
Right.
But just not looking for more things to be whatever emotion you're feeling about.
Yeah. Yeah. Just let it be. And same thing if you're experiencing sadness. It's like, and people are like, how are you? I'm sad. No, you're not sad. I'm feeling sad right now. Hey, I am experiencing sadness, but you're not sad. Like that's not who you are, right? But we tend to claim those emotions, and describing ourselves rather than, oh, this is, I'm feeling sad right now.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I've said that sometimes and people are like, oh, what? And I'm like, no, you don't have to fix it. Like, it's all good. It's just a feeling. Like, it'll pass, right?
Yeah.
But you asked me how I was, I'm going to tell you. Right?
Well, again, that goes back to, generally speaking, we have a notion in society that that's a feeling we don't want to experience, or that we should do everything we can to solve or avoid, or and we've said this a million times too, the more that you try not to feel something, it's going to take longer for your body to process and release it.
Yeah. So the other things of like, how to be able to connect back to you and embrace your natural essence, you will hear me say this, and I've said it, and I know Deb said it 1,000 times, is heart wall. Like if you have a heart wall, it clouds so much. And I love when I get to work with people and to have an after conversation of, oh my gosh, I feel so much more connected to me. Like I'm expressing myself through my art, or through dance, or I'm doing these things that I never wanted to do. Right. It connects. So heart wall is basically exactly what it sounds like. Imagine it's just this wall of emotions that keeps you, blocked away, just as if you were in a trauma and you put up a defense because you needed to, and that was wise at that point. But then that trauma is no longer there. You're still walking around with this armor, right? And so that inhibits your ability to experience life. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so this heart wall is huge in releasing so that you can get back to your natural essence. And I could say for me, I mean, Deb, I know my friend with this weekend, she was like, I was telling them about this franchise idea for this dog thing. And she was like, oh my gosh. She's like, if you had told me 4 years ago that you'd be talking about like opening something for dogs and that you're the person that all the dogs love. She's like, you come over and my dogs just like love you and you're on the floor with them and da, da, da. And I'm like, I know. I'm like, but it like when I got rid of my heart wall and really did some of that deep work, it was like this. The thing is, I always like rejected them and didn't like them because I know what a sucker I am and how soft I am, and it was like I was walking around armored up all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, just give me all of them. And I love, well, not all of them, but like, I'm
Right.
so much more loving and open. And I know that's me personally, but I can say that with everybody's heart wall that I've helped clear. So it's a heart wall. And then just healing, once you can get rid of the heart wall, then healing the trauma, like around those areas that have caused the woundedness.
Yes.
And it can be cultural trauma, family, generational trauma, personal trauma. All of these things get like just stickiness, like, stuck on us. It's like, I have these post-it notes, I just thought of this, but it's like, oh, we got to feel this. Oh, we got to feel this. Like, oh, got to feel this.
Yeah.
Got to feel this. You get the idea. Like now I'm walking around, you don't get to see my true essence because I'm just gunked up.
Yeah.
And then once we get them down, then you can experience your true essence. And then the law of polarity, you're like, oh, yeah, like these are opposites and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like
Anything else?
No, I mean, I think that's, I feel like the law of polarity to me, so much of it lies in this masculine feminine concept. I'm trying to think like expanding it beyond that. But I think as far as how you want to express and create the life that you desire, that's really one of the first foundations. Like you said, get the heart wall done. And we can help with even just looking at like, where are the labels you were given as a kid or as, like how, like, cause as we said, you get shoved into a box and that is going to influence how you feel safe to express yourself.
Right.
So yeah, I think there's so much we can do to help that. And then, even if you aren't going to work with either one of us, I don't want it to sound like we're saying you have to work with us. Just having some awareness about this and spend a few days really noticing the thoughts, notice the experiences, and then play with the concepts of put yourself in a mission-driven situation or solving a problem, or imagine yourself being competitive and see how that feels for you. Like I am so not a competitive person, and I did CrossFit for like 3 years. And then actually that gym just kind of closed down in COVID times, whatever, the gym shut down. And then I realized like, I don't think that was the best workout for me. Like it really was like, I liked the people, which is why I kept doing it. But right. I hated the lifting. I hated it. Why was I doing it? But it was very, and like the concepts of having a leaderboard and like having to report your time. I would walk out of the gym all the time and they would be like, you didn't give us your time. I'm like, I don't care. I just want to do a workout.
It's funny because I will at my Pilates studio, they have these like, month, like every once in a while they have a month where like they have a contest, and I'm like, I'm all in, I'm gonna win. The first time I came in first place, the second time I came in third place, and I didn't really try that hard for the third time, but I was like, I'm gonna win. I'm very competitive, and I'm definitely, I'm still, because that's some of just personality stuff, but I'm okay with.
I mean, not that everybody that's competitive is in a masculine energy. I'm just saying like to explore what's comfortable for you. So like that's one for me that I know is just, I just don't. I mean, I'm sure there's definitely things I'd be competitive about for sure. Just not, like not everything. But then on the flip side, spend some time really kind of just moving intuitively and see how that feels for you. Does that feel really stupid and weird, or spend some time just like chilling in soft baths and like doing like some of these, just receiving messages. Like if that feels like kind of not normal to you, maybe you're not, maybe that's not your feminine essence, right? So yeah.
So we had said we were going to have a guest on tonight, and if anybody's listening on the next one, but that didn't happen because he lost his voice, so it's kind of hard to do. So fingers crossed, he'll be on next week, and we're going to talk about some fun stuff. Well, I'll just leave it at that because that's saying, but we'll have
I'm
to do
excited.
that. Yeah. So, and then after that, we'll continue with these laws. And if you have any questions, reach out, and we will see you next time.
Yeah. Goodbye.